All right, love, huh? Let's get philosophical. We're diving deep into Plato's Phaedrus, a classic that tackles love, madness, those intense feelings, and rhetoric. Chariot races, winged horses, it's going to get wild. Not exactly your typical Valentine's Day stuff.
It's interesting that Plato chose a dialogue, a conversation to explore these themes, not just like a lecture on love. It's like he's saying to us, hey, engage, think, explore. It's not about one answer, right?
Yeah, like we're joining a 2,000-year-old conversation. I'm in. So picture ancient Greece, a summer day. Socrates and his young friend Phaedrus are just chilling by the Ilissus River under a plane tree. Sounds idyllic, but is there more to this setting?
Oh, absolutely. Plato was very intentional. This conversation, it's outside Athens, away from the noise, the business. It's like he's saying, let's step away from the everyday world and really think.
Like finding that quiet corner in a coffee shop to focus. So, in this tranquil setting, Phaedrus is eager to share a speech he just heard. It's by Lysias, a famous orator, and the topic, is it better to have a non-lover or a lover as your companion? Bold question.
Now, Lysias, very practical guy, makes a case for the non-lover. Stability, no drama, freedom, no jealous outbursts, no late-night texts.
He makes lovers sound like a recipe for chaos. And Phaedrus, young, maybe a little naive, seems totally captivated by Lysias's words, his arguments. But I have a feeling Socrates might see things differently.
Oh, Socrates, never one to back down from a challenge. And this is where it gets interesting. He agrees to give his own speech, but mimicking Lysias' style. He actually argues for the lover. Passion, devotion, going the extra mile, all the things Lysias dismissed.
Wait, so is he playing devil's advocate here, arguing for something he doesn't actually believe?
Exactly. Brilliant move. Not just to win, but to expose rhetoric's potential for manipulation, showing Phaedrus, showing us how powerful language can be even when it's not true. Like, the social media influencers convincing you to buy anything.
Right, a little trickery to get Phaedrus thinking critically. But then, another curveball. Socrates says, I know nothing about love. He says the words just flowed out of him like divine inspiration. Is he serious?
Classic Socrates. Blurs the lines, right? Sincere or ironic. Challenging us to think deeper. Feigns ignorance to expose flaws in our thinking. Wouldn't want to play poker with him.
So we have Socrates, master of provocation. Then a sudden twist. He feels guilty for speaking badly of love, who's a god, after all. What's happening here?
The recantation. Big shift. The tone. It gets serious. He's no longer talking to Phaedrus directly, but to a fair youth, representing true love.
Like moving from debate into a quest for truth. And this quest takes us deep. Socrates talks about the soul's immortality, how it's glimpsed true beauty in a pre-existent state. Then there's the chariot allegory. The soul is a chariot. Intriguing.
Oh, the chariot allegory, one of the most famous images in philosophy. Picture this, your soul, it's like a chariot. The charioteer, he's struggling to control two horses. One, noble and obedient, represents reason. The other, wild and unruly, that's our desires. A powerful image of our internal struggles.
Okay, so this charioteer, he's got a tough job, right? Trying to keep these horses in check. Where does love fit into this whole picture?
Right, so the charioteer, the goal is to guide the chariot towards true beauty. And love that we experience here, it can be a reminder of that true beauty. The beauty our souls encountered before we were born. It's like a spark, ignites our longing to return to that perfect beauty.
So falling in love gives our soul wings, helps us reach our full potential. But hold on, you mentioned love and madness. Isn't love usually, doesn't it cloud our judgment?
That's a good point. We often see love as this irrational thing, makes us do crazy things, right? But Socrates, he distinguishes between types of madness. Some are actually good for us. Divine madness, he calls them, inspired by the gods, can lead to greater understanding, insight.
Okay, so not all madness is bad. What are these different types of divine madness?
Well, there are 4 types. First, there's prophetic madness, inspired by Apollo. Then there's initiatory madness, associated with Dionysus. And then there's poetic madness, guided by the muses. And of course, erotic madness, connected to Eros, the god of love.
So even though love can feel like, losing our minds a little, it could be that we're connecting with something bigger.
Exactly. Erotic madness might seem irrational, but it can lead us towards good, especially if guided by philosophy. It's channeling that passion into a pursuit of truth and beauty, not just, chasing those fleeting pleasures.
So it's deeper than just those butterflies in your stomach feelings.
Yeah.
There's a whole philosophical side to it. Makes you think maybe those ancient Greeks were onto something. This brings us back to the lover versus non-lover debate. Now that we've talked about the soul and divine madness, what does Socrates say?
Right. So Socrates revisits the argument. New perspective, right? He argues that a lover guided by virtue, a desire for the good of the other person, can help that person, the beloved, remember true beauty, help them grow their wings, a guide, a mentor, helping them reach their potential.
So it's not just about finding someone who makes you feel good, but someone who pushes you to be better. Pretty high standard for a relationship.
It is, but this is Socrates talking about ideal love. Not every relationship will be like that, of course. And he contrasts this with the non-lover who, yeah, they might offer stability, but they can't offer this kind of spiritual growth. They just don't have that same passion, that desire to see the other person grow.
Like the difference between wanting to be comfortable and being committed to growing together.
Exactly. And this leads us to another key theme in the Phaedrus, the link between rhetoric and truth. Remember how impressed Phaedrus was by Lysias's language?
Oh, yeah, he was a huge fan. But didn't Socrates have some criticisms about rhetoric just being used for persuasion? Like, what's the point of fancy words if there's no substance?
You got it. Socrates has a great analogy for this. He compares a rhetorician, one who only cares about persuasion, to a doctor who knows the names of medicines but doesn't understand how the body works.
So it's like having a toolbox
Mm-hmm.
full of tools but not knowing how to use them, or even when to use them.
That's a great way to put it. True rhetoric, for Socrates, it needs a deep understanding of the soul, knowing what to say, how to say it, to get the desired effect. But that effect should be good for the person you're talking to, guiding them toward truth, goodness, not just manipulating them.
Like the difference between a politician who wants votes and a leader who actually wants to serve the people.
Exactly. And Socrates gives an example, Pericles.
Pericles, the Athenian statesman. He was a brilliant speaker, wasn't he? So I guess Socrates is saying he's a good example.
Yes, he holds up Pericles as this skilled rhetorician, but who also studied philosophy. Not just charismatic, he had a deep understanding of people, from studying with the philosopher Anaxagoras. He knew how to move people, not just with words, but with ideas.
So like the ultimate communicator, connecting with people on like an intellectual and emotional level.
Exactly. And that leads us to Socrates' view of true rhetoric. It's not tricks. It's using language as a tool to guide souls toward truth and goodness.
Helping people see the world differently, think more deeply, and become, better versions of themselves. I like that idea, but that's pretty challenging for anyone who wants to be a master of words. Okay, so we've spent some time with the Phaedrus, explored love, madness, rhetoric. It's pretty deep stuff. What's the takeaway for us, people who aren't ancient Greek philosophers?
Well, that's what's great about Plato, right? He doesn't just give us answers wrapped up nice and neat. He gives us questions to think about, ideas that spark our curiosity. The Phaedrus, it makes us look at love differently. Not just about, personal happiness, but about growing philosophically.
Yeah, I can see why this dialogue has resonated with people for so long. It's not just an academic thing. It's relevant to our lives today. But I got to admit, some of this stuff is pretty complex. How do we actually apply these ideas to our own lives?
Well, one big takeaway is that love can be powerful. It can transform us, but it takes work. You need self-awareness, a commitment to, guiding your desires towards something more than just pleasure. Remember the chariot. We've all got that wild horse, that desire that can pull us in different directions. But like a good charioteer, we can learn to control it, steer toward what's really important.
So it's about recognizing those desires and making choices, not letting our passions rule us, but using them for something bigger.
Yeah, exactly. And the connection between rhetoric and truth, that's huge too. We're surrounded by information, persuasion, sometimes manipulation. The Phaedrus reminds us to think critically, question what we see and hear, look for the real meaning behind the words.
But we all need a BS detector to separate the empty words from real communication. Communication that's based on truth, a real desire to connect.
You got it. We can learn from Socrates, from his approach, asking good questions, challenging those assumptions, seeking to understand, not just to win.
It sounds like the Phaedrus isn't just a text. It's like a guidebook for a more thoughtful, fulfilling life.
I think that's a great way to look at it. And in the end, the big question isn't what Plato thought about love, but what do you think? What speaks to you in the Phaedrus? What questions does it raise for you about your own experiences with love, your desires, how you communicate?
It definitely gives us a lot to think about. Maybe, like Socrates and Phaedrus, we should all spend a little more time contemplating, even if we can't find a shady plane tree by a quiet river.
That's
Who knows?
cool.
Maybe we'll even find a bit of that divine madness along the way.